Okay, we are live. Assalamu alaikum to everyone. So I just wanted to do this quick impromptu live to just answer some of your questions if anyone comes online and just to share some thoughts. Alhamdulillah, I just finished a session for some brothers, a brilliant organization in Australia, mashallah, an online session where we discussed nihilism and the implications of atheism. And as I was thinking that through and as I was sort of going through that content, it just, some aspects of it struck me again. And some things really, really got me to appreciate how blessed we are to have Islam as a way of life. And unfortunately, how unfortunate it is that there's so many people out there that don't know about Islam, that don't have this blessing, and going through that content again just a couple of minutes ago really sort of allowed me to appreciate this far more, that when you really think about atheism and naturalism and any view that denies Allah, denies God, it's so sad, man. It's such a sad reality. And it's not sad that people are denying God, because God is free of need, but what's sad is the position it puts the human being in and how it impacts the human being and how it almost degrades the human being in so many ways. It's so sad, honestly. And there's people that are just completely unaware of this reality. Something Sabur touched upon, or we discussed in the previous last week's podcast, that most people are just following like sheep, right? People are just too busy and they're too caught up and they're too plugged in to just pull themselves back and really think about their reality and really think about their existence. And really think about what it means when they say they're an atheist, or what it means when they say they're a naturalist, or that God doesn't exist. And I'm sure if they did, if people just stopped and thought about these questions, man, it would really change the outlook. I really believe they'll just leave, because atheism and naturalism and what it entails, or its implications, are so averse to the fitrah of a human being, guys. Honestly, it's scary, subhanAllah. But anyway, I'll share some of those thoughts with you guys now and some of the reflections. I've mentioned some of these things before, but there were some new insights as well that I wanted to share with you guys. But also what I want to do in this live is just mention a few things first. So obviously we've got a few lives coming up this week. Let me just see if I can pull it up on the schedule and see where it is. So we've got two lives. I think one is on the 16th, which is Thursday, I believe. With a brother called, but just check it on my channel, it should be there. But there's one live with a brother called Richard Coupland, and it's on his journey from atheism to Islam. It's a very profound story, and I'm sure you're going to have he's going to give you some brilliant insights. By the way, he's one of our outreach consultants at IRA as well now, mashallah, and he delivers some of the advanced atheism courses as well now. So his story is very, very powerful. Mashallah, Dawah Digital is on. Assalamu alaikum, Mohsin. Hopefully you're well, bro. Definitely check out Dawah Digital if you haven't checked out his channel already, mashallah. He's got some really high quality content. That's what his channel is known for, mashallah. So yeah, that's Richard Coupland. And also, I think later on during the week, or maybe earlier this week, I'll definitely check it. I've forgotten. I have Sheikh Fahd Taslim, who's going to be online as well, inshallah, and he's going to be doing a live stream with me. Sheikh Fahd is may Allah bless him. He's phenomenal, phenomenal da'i, and someone that I've learned so much from, as far as the Quran is concerned, and bringing the Quran into your da'wah. He's gonna drop some amazing gems, inshallah, on his live stream. So definitely check that live stream out too. That being said, let me just quickly flick through, see if there's any questions, because main objective coming on today is just to sort of engage with you guys, share some thoughts, and just answer your questions, inshallah. So philosopher MMA is asking, what's your opinions on dualism and non-dualism, and how this refers to how to refute dualism? To be honest, bro, I haven't looked into it too much, so I'm not going to comment on it. It's not my specialty. I haven't looked into it to the extent where I can even comment on it much, so I will leave that for now. But if I do, and when I do look into it, I'll definitely address you, inshallah. So brother Zico 845 is saying, Assalamu alaikum, bro. Any thoughts on Cosmic Skeptics article, the sly circularity of the Kalam? I haven't read it. I'll actually check it out. I haven't actually read it or gone through it yet. Yeah, so I'll definitely have a look at that. I haven't had a look at it yet. I didn't know he had published that. But But I'll definitely have a look and get back to you guys, inshallah. Let's see. Brother Dower Digital, one of my good friends, is asking, what are you doing in the office? I had to come in today because I had to do a live stream, which I couldn't do from outside the office. But no one's here. So it's literally quarantine. Just moved it from my home to the office right now. It's almost like a ghost town or a ghost building. No one's in the whole office right now. Okay, let's see. Okay, while you guys send in your questions, let me just sort of share some thoughts on some of the reflections from the live that I did with the brothers in Australia. So one of the things we were discussing was sort of a topic which I've touched upon a lot, which is nihilism and the implications of atheism. And as I was going through that, something that really struck me this time was that just subhanAllah, just the way when you turn away from Allah and you adopt any view or outlook of life. And the thing is, guys, is that, look, as human beings, we are subject to adopting a view, a worldview, and we can't escape this, right? Every single human being adopts some sort of worldview or way of looking, or a philosophy or way of looking at life. And that gives them the filters through which they see and understand reality, and it leads them to the beliefs that they have. We can't escape this. What you can do is you can jump from outlook, perspective, worldview, philosophy to another one, right? You can make those jumps in your life, but nevertheless, we are subject to having a way of looking at life. You can't escape this, right? You can't. It's either given to you by your society if you don't think about it, or if you do think about it and you thought about these things, you adopt a view for yourself. You adopt an outlook for yourself. You adopt a worldview for yourself, and then you may hop from worldview to worldview. But we can't escape this. Now, when you adopt atheism or naturalism or any view that denies God, the implications of that are so absurd, guys, honestly, and just so sad that it's painful. It's really, really painful, you know? So for example, to give you guys an example, as soon as you say you're an atheist or a naturalist, and we take the general understanding of what those terms mean, you deny that there's a creator. And generally speaking, you say that everything is a result of physical processes. There's nothing beyond the physical. It's one big physical material accident. That's what life is. That's what existence is. It's one big material accident, you know, and there's nothing, everything can be explained via physical processes. If you take this outlook, you deny God, then essentially everything about existence, including you and your mind and your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions, your understanding of certain virtues, your understanding of certain morals, everything is one big result, one big physical accident. If that's the case, then how do you make sense of anything? If we think about how do you make sense of anything? You know, what does it mean to be good? What does it mean to be virtuous? What does it mean to, you know, care about other human beings and value human life? You know, what does it mean to have purpose? You know, it's empty. It's void, you know? And what's scary and what's profound is that when the human being, say a human being adopts atheism and naturalism, and then he follows through with the thought process, and they understand and acknowledge, okay, everything in existence is a result of just random stuff. Everything is just random. It's an accident, right? And therefore, there is no meaning or purpose to life. It's empty, right? As soon as a person gets to that point, that's where what some of the philosophers, such as Albert Camus, call the absurd kicks in. Now, the absurd, the way he paints it in the myth of Sisyphus, for example, one of his books, is quite profound. And he sort of highlights how when the human being is taken out of their day-to-day sort of mechanical existence, where they just wake up, do the daily activities, go to sleep, wake up, where as soon as they, if you like, unplugged from the matrix, this delusional existence, and they realize that life has no meaning or purpose or value, as soon as that realization kicks in, that they are awoken to that absurd, everything, and the way he paints it is very vivid. It's quite profound. He says the things around you that you ascribe meaning to, even the natural things like the trees, the sky, the stars, suddenly it's like a vacuum and it sucks out the meaning from all of these things. It sucks out the life from all of these things. It sucks out the life from you. It just leaves you empty, right? It's almost like a bottomless pit, and you're sinking and you're falling, and it hits you with such fierce anxiety inside your chest and your heart. It's almost like darkness, right? And I experienced this myself. It's such a painful place to be. Such a pain. It's like you're living your day-to-day daily life. Suddenly you're unplugged, and it's almost like that facade, that veil, that film, that cloak, that image that you were living and you were seeing is just stripped away, and you're in darkness. You're literally in darkness. And in that, it's almost like being surrounded by four walls. There's walls to your side, and there's a wall in front of you and a wall behind you, but you can't see. It's pitch black. You know, and I can, in the book that I'm writing right now, which is probably going to be called Dying to Believe, I sort of portray this imagery there, and I recall it myself. It's almost like being in utter darkness, but being aware of walls around you, and they're closing in on you, right? They're closing in on you. They're very close to you. The front, you can almost smell the wall in front of you and feel it on your nose, and the back, your back is touching the wall behind you. And these walls, these four walls are closing in on you. And from above, it's closing in on you. And from below, it's closing in on you. And this constriction and this suffocation is such a dark and painful place to be. I wish it upon no one. You know, and that's where it pushes you. And that's what Albert Camus so presents as well. And he presents, to be honest, he presents such a vivid imagery of this, that in the second part of his book, when he tries to undo it by giving you an escape, he can't do it, because he paints such a deep hole that he himself cannot get out of. And we'll discuss that in a second. But that darkness, you know, is what the human being is led to when you deny Allah, when you deny God and you turn away from God. Why would anyone want to do this and put themselves in this position, man? Honestly, if you really think about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God mentions this in the Quran, where he says, you know, that those that turn away from Allah and his remembrance would have a constricted existence. They would have a depressed life. The words are ma'ishatan dhanka, a life which is, let me just give you the word. Let's just really understand this word. And this is one of the miracles of the Quran as well, is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses words and the power of words in the Arabic language, in particular the Quran. When Allah says dhanka, that word, it signifies a constriction, being squeezed from all ends, and being almost squeezed so you're being pulled in this one direction. It's a tightness, it's a depression, it's a constriction, right? And when you even say the word dhanka, just say it now. Just say that word. When you say dhanka, it's like in the middle of the word, there's a constriction in the back of your throat. It's like you find it hard to breathe. Your throat closes off. Just to get you to really experience the meaning of the word. So the way the word is said captures the meaning of the word itself. And that's something profound, you know, about the Quran itself. And Ibn Kathir, when he comments on this particular ayah, you know, he mentions that this type of person who turns away from the remembrance of God, from a material, worldly perspective, he or she could have everything. He can have all the money, all of the luxuries, all of the amenities, everything. They can have everything. But they will still have this emptiness and hollow hole inside their hearts, you know, and that is such a painful position to be in, where the world is in your hands, but you are empty. You're completely empty, you know, and that, subhanAllah, if you think about it, that in itself. So when the human being has this realization, it in itself is a blessing from God, because it's like an alarm bell that goes off inside you. Something isn't right. This worldview that you're adopting is leading you to conclusions which are not adding up in line, and they're not in line with your nature. They're not in line with your fitrah, right? You know that, you feel that. And that feeling is a blessing, because if you didn't have that, you would be lost forever. But if you act upon that feeling, that should at least get you to question these worldviews. Maybe I need to leave them because they're degrading me to the point where it's causing such pain and anxiety inside me. I can't make sense of my existence, where I know deep down inside my existence has meaning and purpose, but I can't make sense of it. This atheism, this naturalism doesn't allow me to make sense of it. That's painful. You know, I don't understand why an honest, sincere person, and I don't assume that an honest, sincere person would allow them to continue this way, but why people in general would allow them to suffer this pain, themselves this pain, just to deny a creator. You know, it's absurd. It's crazy when you think about it. And I think that this in itself is one of the greatest proofs that, you know, this atheism and naturalism is false. We don't even have to get to the rational, logical arguments. It's false. It's false on account of the fact that it goes against your very nature as a human being. And not only goes against your nature, but it causes such pain inside the human being, and that is proof, that is evidence, if you ask me, and that is reason to move away from atheism or naturalism. Yeah, so and then the question arises, well, if such a worldview is so weak and baseless and causes such problems for the human being, why do people even follow it? Maybe we can address that in a second, inshallah. Let me just see if you guys have put any other. Yeah, well, Mr. Atheist is saying that's your opinion. Sure, it's my opinion, but it's the opinion of many other people. And what I'm talking about is real life human experiences, bro. I'm talking about experiences people are having. And one of the reasons we don't hear about these experiences too much is because depression and anxiety are taboo subjects. But a lot of depression and anxiety is an existential type of anxiety, which leads to depression. And to be honest, don't take my word for it. There are many atheist forums online, right? If you're not a part of them already, maybe join an atheist forum just to go see this. There are so many atheists online, which are people that have left God and turned to atheism. They are suffering from anxiety and they're suffering from an existential crisis. They're on there, they're discussing with other atheists. I'm feeling low. I don't know what the meaning of my life is anymore. It's empty. I've read this myself. I was drinking the other night, felt good for a while. The next day I felt even worse. And what the advice they've been given is, well, this is a temporary phase. Now it's about, getting used to this and being, brave enough to face this reality that life is meaningless, and then moving forward from there and giving yourself meaning and purpose. But this is just stupidity if we really think about it. Give yourself, this is what some of the existentialist philosophers said, like Camus, going back to he paints the absurd in such clear and vivid words. And then that he opens such a big hole that he can't get out himself. And he suggests, well, look, we have to live with meaning and purpose. We have to give ourselves meaning and purpose. We have to move forward with strength. Something that's echoed by Richard Dawkins as well these days. Oh, we have to give ourselves meaning. We have to be brave and acknowledge that life is meaningless, is pointless, but we give ourselves meaning and purpose. What do you mean by give yourself meaning and purpose? Honestly, just think about that for a second. You're saying that you should make things up for yourself. In other words, you should lie to yourself. Play games like children play games, play dress up. Kids dress up like Spider-Man or Superman, think that they're Spider-Man and Superman for a couple of hours. Yeah, just do that. I mean, look, as human beings, we don't like to be lied to. And we don't especially like to lie to ourselves. Essentially, what we're being told to do is lie to yourself. Make up purpose for yourself because there is no purpose or meaning to life. And that will get you by. Well, would it really get you by? It's absurd. If life is meaningless and purposeless, and there is no meaning or purpose behind anything, then what is the meaning behind making things up? It's pointless making things up then. Why even make things up for yourself? All this is suggesting and highlighting is your nature as a human being, that you are purpose-driven. You can't escape these questions. You can't escape purpose. This is what is pointing towards your nature, the nature which cannot be accounted from this sort of reductionist, sort of empirical science, this atheistic Darwinian outlook on human existence. It can't. You can't escape your nature. Make purpose up. Why even do that? That's pointing towards the fact that you have a purpose-driven existence. Every aspect of our existence is purpose-driven. You can't escape this. But when it comes to our ultimate purpose, there is no purpose. There is no meaning. But we make it up. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, let me just see if there's any. Okay, the fact that. So Oscar Daniel is saying the fact that we look for purpose is not evidence for there being purpose in the universe. See, this is what really sort of gets to me sometimes. And I can get it, I can understand it from your perspective. Because look, we live in a world which is really just pigeonhole people to look at reality in such a narrow way, which is, look, seeing is believing, empirical evidence is evidence. If empiricism proves something, then it's true. If it doesn't, it doesn't exist. Who's ever told us? Why are we assuming this as an axiom? Whereas through the rest of history, human beings were open to the reality and understood that it was very rational to assume that there were many routes to knowledge, and there were realities that were beyond sense perception, right? That's one of the big fundamental issues. That's why even though our souls and our natures are crying out that I have purpose and I need to look for it, we will still continue to deny it because there is no evidence, as suggested here. That just because we have an innate crying for meaning and purpose, that this is not evidence that the universe has purpose. I would say, of course, look, evidence comes in many different shapes and sizes. For some people, they've just unfortunately become, conditioned to see evidence as empirical data, full stop. And that's sad. That's really sad. That's pigeonholing yourself. But if we just open our minds and understand, well, evidence comes in many shapes and forms. When my nature cries out and is telling me that I have purpose and I need to look for it, maybe that is a sign that I actually do have purpose. The fact that although atheism or naturalism is pushing me to this point where, I'm almost being forced to acknowledge there is no meaning or purpose to life, but I still want to make a purpose and meaning for my life. Just doing the activity of making a purpose and meaning for your life highlights that there is something about you which is really, that's looking for purpose, and it's looking for something that must be out there. Otherwise, it's just absurd to find a creature that's so desperate to find meaning and purpose outside of the sort of reduced down Darwinian perspective, where we're just here to survive and reproduce. That's crazy. That doesn't make sense. That account of human existence doesn't really add up. There's something else that's going on, and we need to really open our minds and really think about this. Of course, I'm not going to say this is evidence, clear evidence for the existence that there is purpose, that purpose exists out there and there's purpose to our existence. No, but this is a sign enough for us to inquire further. Absolutely. Okay, let's see. So there's a question here by Waqas Akhtar. Do atheists assert that the universe comes from nothing? That seems so silly. Why do they still have a following? Now, to be fair to them, let's be nuanced. There are some atheists that say the universe came from nothing. There are other atheists that say a universe came from nothing, but they redefine what they mean by nothing, right? So their nothing isn't nothing. It's actually something, such as Lawrence Krauss in his book, From a Universe from Nothing. There are other atheists that would say a universe came from something else, but we don't know what that other thing is, but that thing must be material or have a physical existence. And yet there are other atheists that will say, well, no, the universe came from something which is beyond the physical, but we don't say it's God. So there is a spectrum. There is a huge spectrum here, right? But for those atheists that want to argue the universe came from nothing, absolutely, I would say that's a silly proposition. It makes no sense, and it's counterintuitive and it's irrational, right? And that's where we can have that discussion about, well, where did the universe come from? Inshallah. So, brother Asim asked about zakat. Bro, I can't answer questions about zakat and specific issues in Islam. These are not my speciality, so I don't comment on these things in public, inshallah. But brother Asim Iqbal, do definitely check that out. Maybe just speak to a local imam or a scholar, inshallah, and they'll be able to help you out with that. So, Oscar Daniel is saying, I agree with a lot of what you said, man. Oscar, are you a atheist, theist? Just so I know who I'm speaking to, bro. Don't take that in any offensive way. I'm just trying to understand the people I'm addressing, because most people I know are Muslim by virtue of them appearing here regularly. So, Oscar, let me know if you're an atheist or what your particular view is. But it's nice to know that you agree with a lot of this, because essentially what I'm doing is I'm just talking about some very simple logical points. And I'm just trying to highlight something. And I think all of these things at least point towards the fact that as human beings, we do have a nature which yearns towards something. And that nature cannot be accounted for from a purely sort of evolutionary Darwinian paradigm. There's something else that's going on there, definitely, that we need to inquire further about, even if you're an atheist, a hardline atheist. Okay, so Oscar's an agnostic and atheist. Okay, weak atheist. Okay. So Oscar, I'd really encourage you, bro. Look, if you're looking into these things, hopefully, if you've agreed with some of the things I've said, at least if you've agreed with the aspects that, we should broaden our horizons from the perspective of what we consider knowledge and what we consider as evidence, then I really recommend you to just read the Quran. Just read, but read it with an open mind. Right? That's the only request that I have from you, and just see what it says to you and how it speaks to you. And a key I would say is, and this would apply across the board, is to really before you go on that journey of inquiry, and if you are inquiring, to really look inwards, and this applies to Muslims and everyone, look inwards and see what the internal state is. Whatever you want to call it, your soul, your heart, your brain, whatever you want to refer to it, check your internal state. Are you sincerely looking for the truth? Meaning that when you do come across certain things and certain realities, that you would assess them in the most objective way you possibly can without any biases. This is very important, because a lot of the time what happens is we go on this supposed journey for truth and inquiry, but we're not really sincere. We're just trying to confirm a particular bias that we already have. We don't want to have that approach. And even when I'm reading certain things and I'm looking into certain things, I try to be as neutral as I possibly can, because that's the only real true way we're going to engage with that idea, and we're going to benefit from that particular idea. So just have that in mind, and that's what I say regarding or what I would suggest. Okay, let's see. There's a few questions that are coming in. Yeah, so look, here's the thing. So this is a very interesting question. Brother Muhammad Ali says, also I'm speaking with atheists, they always ask for evidence for Islam. When someone asks you for evidence, Islam is the true religion, what evidence would you give? Now, there are many different evidences we can give, right? It doesn't have to be limited to just rational, logical evidences. One of the things I like to do with atheists, or when I'm talking to atheists, is before I give them the position of judge, I like to sort of remind them that they don't have the qualifications to be a judge. And let me explain what I mean. And this is why I'm not trying to say this in any derogatory, offensive way. I'm just trying to highlight something very important, which is sometimes we give the person the credentials of a judge when they don't have the credentials. What I mean by this is, when an atheist comes to you and asks you, okay, prove to me God exists, we straight away give them logical arguments for God's existence. But first thing I like to do sometimes is to remind them that, look, you're not in that position right now, my friend, because if you assume atheism or naturalism, especially a naturalistic type of atheism, then you put yourself in the position where you can't even account for your rational, truth-bearing faculties. The faculties you're going to be utilizing in having this discussion with me, right? Because when you have a discussion with someone, you assume you're rational, and you assume you have ordered faculties, ordered enough, which can lead you to truth. Otherwise, you wouldn't have discussion with someone. How do you account for such truth-bearing rational faculties on atheism or naturalism? Well, you can't if you really think about it. It's impossible, right? All of the academic research on this is suggesting at best you have to be skeptical, as Hamza says. You have to adopt the position of skepticism when it comes to your truth-bearing rational faculties. And well, if you adopt that position, then you're not really in the position to have any real rational discussion with someone, right? So that's it. I like to highlight these things, that look, the worldview you're coming to me from is fundamentally flawed in a way which doesn't really give you the authority to have a rational discussion with me, right? So I don't do this to play games. I'm doing this to have a very frank and fruitful discussion with people, right? Sometimes we give them too much atheism, not people, but atheism, too much intellectual respect. That, okay, here's an argument for God's existence. You be the judge, my friend. Well, no, let's take it a step down a bit. Well, do you have the credentials to be a judge in the first place? I don't think you do. And here's the reasons why, right? So I like to address it from that perspective. When it comes to proofs, like I said, there are many different proofs. For a specific individual, sufficient proof may be they open the Quran, they read the Quran, and their fitrah, their nature recognizes this is from God. That's sufficient proof for them. For another person, it may be they need some rational arguments for God's existence or the Quran being from God. Everyone's different. Proof and evidence is relative to the individual. That's what we need to understand, and it comes in different shapes and sizes and forms, right? Something we need to really appreciate. Okay, let's see. There was an interesting question here that I wanted to quickly address. And it links to another point. So Zico 1845 says, he's responding to someone about, and says, David Hume challenged the first premise of Kalam being a priori knowledge. Now, just a general note on a priori knowledge. Now, this is there's another shift that's taken place in the world over the past couple of centuries. And I mentioned this in the previous video I put out as well, which is that up until the 17th and 18th century, the predominant view amongst thinkers, philosophers, even natural philosophers who you would consider scientists, etc., was that there are different types of knowledge, that there is a priori, if you like, knowledge, or a priori knowledge which is innate, which the human being is born with. So essentially, there is knowledge that the human being is born with, and there are different elements to this. And this is something that Islam also acknowledges, from at least from the perspective of the Fitrah, that the human being is born with the Fitrah, which is the nature which encapsulates certain knowledge. And there are different elements to this, but what's of relevance here is that God exists and that he deserves worship. It's only after the 17th and 18th century that there was a shift in the collective thinking of people, where they went from this type of understanding to the understanding of tabula rasa, generally speaking. A term I think that was introduced by John Locke in his essays on education, where he sort of suggested that children are born tabula rasa, blank slates, and we acquire knowledge through our experience of the world. There is no a priori knowledge that human beings have. But if you look at some of the most predominant thinkers throughout history, predominant philosophers throughout history, people of substance and weight, they acknowledge this reality. They didn't shy away from this, and I mentioned this in the previous video, so if you want, you can check that out. It's regarding the Fitrah itself. But anyway, I wanted to just sort of share that idea, because again, that's caused a shift in the world where we think we're a blank slate, and the only way we acquire knowledge is through experiencing and engaging with the world around us. This is not true. The only reason we have been led to believe this is true is because it's just, if you like, there's a type of consensus in regards to this. And we don't think about these things much. But the reality is there are many routes to knowledge. Much of what we believe is based on testimony. It's not based on first-hand experience. Take the coronavirus, for example, right? 99.9% of us believe that the coronavirus exists, not because we have observed it under a microscope ourselves. We believe it exists because of the testimony of the scientists and our perception of the signs of this virus and its manifestation or its effects. That's why we believe it exists. We don't have first-hand experience of it, right? Just to highlight to us guys that, look, there are many routes to knowledge. There is not one way of knowing things and us believing things. Even today, right? We believe most things based on testimony. We believe in our parents, that our parents are our parents, not because we've done DNA tests. Now, someone may say, oh, well, we can do a DNA test. Yes, but right now you hold that belief not on that potential that you can do a test. You hold that belief based on other things, reasons, the testimony of your parents, etc. Right? So there are many routes to knowledge. Sometimes we just limit ourselves, unfortunately. And unfortunately, many atheists fall into this trap as well, a lot more. Okay, let's see. So Mr. Atheist is asking, what is your purpose? This is a very good question. Now, in Islam, God has told us clearly that he created us for a very specific purpose, which he outlines. And he says in the Quran that he created us for no other reason except to worship him. The Arabic is وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that he created us and jinkind, but we're focusing on the humans right now. So he created the human being for no other reason except to worship him. Now, the understanding of this is to know God and to worship him, right? And this worship also now encapsulates, because we have to understand worship from the Islamic perspective. It's quite a profound concept. It's not the type of concept we understand from a general, understanding of the word worship with our, and the way it's been almost smudged with a certain historical context. Worship from an Islamic perspective is profound from the perspective that, it's holistic. Worship means everything we do in our day-to-day lives, in our conscious, awake existence, if we do it with the right intention, it is an act of worship. So every manifestation of our conscious being, even if it's helping people, taking care of humanity, providing for the poor, helping the old lady cross the road, taking care of your neighbors, being selfless, all of these things are or can be a form of worship. So we were created to worship God. And worshiping God means acting in this material physical existence with the consciousness of God, with the aim of pleasing him and attaining his reward, without any sort of selfish or personal wants from that perspective. So not doing it for ourselves, not to get a kick out of it, to feel good, but to do it for the creator of the heavens and the earth. And therefore, and when this means also, to express all of the abilities God has given us for His sake. Whether and this is why worship could be study, learning, acquiring knowledge, right? This is something that's pushed in Islam. The first word that ever was revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, was Iqra, to read, to recite. So it's comprehensive. That's essentially what I'm getting at. And that is the purpose of human existence, to recognize the Creator and then to live and act in accordance with the way the Creator has told us to live. And in doing so, or to achieve that, is to express all of the abilities that we have and to put all of the abilities God has given us to use in the worship of God. That's essentially how I understand it. And that's just a summary of it, not a detailed account of what I'm trying to say. So hopefully that gives you a bit more context, bro. That's Mr. Atheist. Okay, let's see. So, by possibly in existence. Okay. Okay, I'm just trying to go through your questions. So let's see, there's a question here by Oscar. He says, they read the Bible and Fitrah told them it was the true word of God. So will they be punished for going against Quranic principles? Now, I don't know what the link here with the Bible is. I'm not sure if Christianity has the concept of the Fitrah, and if it does, I don't know what form it takes. But from the Islamic perspective, look, I wouldn't go as far as what is punishable. I don't think that we don't need to take the discussion there. But what I would say is that the Fitrah is a beautiful tool that God has given the human being, because it almost acts as a checksum. So, for example, when God sends a revelation, and the human being, the sincere human being, the honest human being reads revelation from God, something from deep inside would, after tasting that revelation, recognize it, because it'll be in line with the nature of the human being. That's essentially what we need to understand it. So if anything, it's a gift from God to help us find Him, right? Along with all the other tools. So God has given us rational faculties. So we employ reasoning, we use reasoning, we reflect upon the world. And this is what some of the philosophers did, or lean towards after the rebellion against the church. Voltaire, for example, he was more about, let's use our reason, reflect upon the world. They called it natural theology, I think. And we know there's a creator based on the signs we see of this creator within the physical material world, right? So we can use reason to reflect upon the signs of God. And God encourages us to do this in the Quran. But then when we do this, it'll be in line with the nature of the person. It'll add up. It's like two pieces of the puzzle that come together. The nature recognizes there's a creator. When we reason upon the creation, we will reflect upon the universe, and we look at the signs of God. Okay, we picked it up. Yes, it's in line with what I already know deep down inside. When we read revelation from God, okay, when God says, for example, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, the very first verse or the second verse of the very first chapter of the Quran, where God says, all perfect thanks and praise belongs to God, the creator of the heavens and the earth. I recognize this innately. Now, this is a very powerful point, Oscar. Hopefully you appreciate this, because gratitude is something that the human being recognizes. It's something that it's innate to all of us. We have to give thanks. And if we don't, it weighs us down. And this is why, even as therapy for many people suffering from depression these days, there are protocols in gratitude to give thanks, to be grateful, right? So God reminds us that ultimate gratitude is due to Him, the one that created everything in the first place, the one that is ultimately responsible for everything that you are grateful for in this life, all the things that you have. And this adds up. This comes as it fits with that innate puzzle, to two pieces, the innate recognition of gratitude and revelation where God says that He created us, or that we should be grateful to Him. This fits perfectly. So we see that these pieces of the puzzle come together. It's in a very profound way. And this is a blessing from God to make it easy for us to recognize Him. So hopefully that sort of gives you a bit more context in regards to that. Okay, atheists always talk about... Okay, this is an interesting question by Catch22. It says, atheists always talk about evil, but if you think about what will be the point in doing good if there was no flaws. I think what you're getting at is it's a very powerful point, which is that as human beings, we work with contrast, like opposites. So we only really appreciate good, and we understand the concept of good and acknowledge this, which I believe is a part of our nature as well, to sort of, we have a taste for what's good, if you like. We recognize it, right? We know it, it's intuitive. But we can only really appreciate it when we see its contrast, which is bad. And when we can compare it or juxtapose it to bad, right? So in a way, because there is evil and suffering in the world, we therefore understand what good is, and therefore we appreciate what good is. And this is why when we go through hardships in our life, then when good times come, we really appreciate those good times. Because if we lived a life in a world, in a universe which is good, full stop, well, would we appreciate that? Would we know what that means? So I think as we work with contrast, it's like saying this. If I give you a practical sort of example of that, imagine you have two sheets of paper right in front of you, right? Now on one sheet of paper, I put a white dot on the piece of paper. On the other sheet, I put a black dot. If I showed you the white sheet of paper with the white dot, and I asked you, show me where the white dot is, you won't be able to find it, because it's a white dot on a white piece of paper. There's no contrast, right? But on the other piece of paper with a black dot, you'll immediately be able to point at the black dot, right? So we work like this as human beings. We work with contrasts. So I think one of the wisdoms behind there being hardships and trials in life is so the human being can really appreciate what good is. Again, as a metaphor, we can look at this coronavirus outbreak. When the ban is lifted and the lockdown is lifted and we go back to our daily lives, I'm sure we're going to really appreciate life and just the ability to be out there and to socialize, etc., much more, because it was taken away from us. We experienced the opposite. So yeah, we work like this as human beings, absolutely. Okay, let's see. Okay, I'm just going to flick through again and see if there's any other. It's good to see you guys engaging on the chat as well, mashallah. Okay, Mr. Say no. Yeah, so here's a good point, and I think this will be nice to sort of round it off on. Isama Kilik is saying the Quran was sent down to confirm previous revelations. Now, this is a very beautiful point, because one of the barriers, if you like, to people coming to or reading the Quran, or misunderstanding they have, is that this is a new religion that was made up, and it was a concoction of Christianity and Judaism, and it was made up to serve a particular purpose, which it no longer serves. This is not true, because from the Islamic tradition, we know that God has been sending revelation and messengers throughout history, and he sent the same fundamental message throughout history with different laws according to their particular times, etc. But the same fundamental message that God created us to know him and to worship him, and that God exists and that he is uniquely one and he's unlike anything you can imagine. We don't believe in a God which is a man or becomes a man or anything like this. And what happened throughout history was people, because God didn't find it fit to preserve that message at the time, people changed it for many different reasons, mostly due to economic gain in some way, shape or form. And eventually, it got to the point where then, the revelation that God had sent was so distorted that God sent another messenger. And this chain of messengers was continued, and every nation was sent a messenger. And, if you look throughout history, and I'm going to try to get Jerry Kochlan, someone I've done, a good friend who's I've done other videos with before on the history of monotheism. When you look throughout history, you see the remnants of that truth from many different perspectives. So and what Jerry has done, he's looked into the history of religion and the different views people have had. And what he's showing, and I think is profound, is that we are sold a certain history when it comes to religion, which is, generally speaking, that human beings, and I can see why this was done, because it's in line with the Darwinian type of model, which is that human beings, we started off with beliefs in many gods, and we would ascribe sort of a divinity to objects and things and the grass and the sky and the clouds, etc. And then over time, as people's thinking evolved and their concepts and ideas evolved, it sort of channeled into this belief of one God, of monotheism. That's the history we're told of religion generally, mainstream. But there was if you look again, rewinding the tape back a couple of decades and a century or so, you would see that there was an opposing view, which was no, that actually we find remnants in ancient traditions, even till today, in tribes which are still closed off from the world, of monotheism, the foundations of monotheism, which were changed later, and there were gods and deities added later into that mix for one reason or the other. And this is in line with what Islam teaches as well. And we see that reality there, the remnants of it there. Even I mean, if you read philosophers, old philosophers, and trust me, between Socrates and Plato, and the philosophers we see today or the past couple of decades, there's a night and day difference in their philosophies. Yeah, it's totally different. What they understood to be philosophy is totally different from what we understand to be philosophy today. If you look at look at Plato's dialogues, where Socrates, the main figure in most of his dialogues, the views he shares and the things he discusses, such as the afterlife, God, the soul, innate knowledge, right? Innate knowledge that's there within human beings, virtue, morals, ethics, all of these types of things that are discussed. At the very least, what it seems like is that these early philosophers had access to maybe some remnants of earlier prophets that were probably sent to their nation or were sent to some nations which they got hold of, right? So we see these remnants there, but it seems like there's been a movement which has tried to sort of do away with this history, especially when it comes to the history of religion, of monotheism being there, and then over time it being corrupted, and different tribes and different groups of people in different parts of the world having monotheism as a foundation, which was later developed or distorted as time went by. So the fundamental message of the Quran and Islam is that, or in regards to this, that God sent messengers with the same fundamental message throughout history, and then God sent the final revelation, which was the Quran, which stands now till the day of judgment. And God himself says in the Quran, there is a prophecy where God says that he has revealed it and that he himself will preserve it, and it indeed is preserved. I mean, if you pick up the Cambridge Companion of the Quran, if you want a non-Muslim source, read that. There is an essay in there which talks about the preservation of the Quran. Most, I would say, non-Muslim, Orientalist, Western historians who are honest, they would acknowledge that the Quran is preserved. The Quran we have today is preserved as it was, as is the Quran that was there at the time of the Prophet, peace be upon him. That is something profound. That is a prophecy which has been fulfilled, right? And the message of the Quran is so profound and it's so timeless. But one of my biggest pains is that there are so many atheists and non-Muslims out there that dismiss the Quran based on false narratives that are out there regarding the Islam and the Quran. It's so painful to see this. Honestly, when you study the Quran, you read the Quran, approach it from a perspective of just historical literature. If that's what you have to do initially, read it. It will change your life. There are stories and parables and ideas there which contain a universal message. That can literally change you. A lot of these principles and ideas that we see in Stoicism, that we see in New Age philosophies, that we see, for example, people like maybe like people like Jordan Peterson pushing these ideas and which people are really inclining towards these values. They're in the Quran and they're universal. They are there and they're for all of humanity. But unfortunately, the image of Islam that we're sold is, where people, they cherry pick a particular law or a derivative of a law in line with which is supposed to be seen in a holistic framework of the implementation of this entire religion, with the understanding of its foundational principles, and its drive, which is the worship of the one true God, and humanity being reminded of its purpose. But it's been cherry picked and it's been pushed cushioned in a certain way, and it's just been drilled into people's minds that, look, this is a barbaric, backward way of life. And it's so sad to see this, honestly, where Islam is so profound and people are just missing out on something. And it saddens me to see, honestly, so many atheists online that are unfortunately, and it's nice to see people like Oscar who come onto these chats and they're more willing to learn and to look into things, and that's a profound thing to see, and it inspires me too. You know, it inspires me because it's powerful, man. It's really powerful to see someone who's an agnostic yet is open-minded, or is an atheist and yet is open-minded and is willing to look into Islam and give it a shot. That's profound, because it takes a lot for a person to do this, you know, to acknowledge their nature and recognize there is something out there and I need to be looking further. You know, it's easy to be a sheep and just follow Dawkins and Sam Harris and just echo what they're saying without understanding what they're saying and without understanding the implications of what they're saying, you know. But it takes something to really critically think about these views and what they're suggesting. So I guess I'm going to wrap this up by just sort of outlining one or two things, which is, number one, if you are an atheist or a naturalist, really just really try to sit down by yourself and think about the implications of those worldviews. What does it mean? And what it means, is it in line with your nature? Just ask yourself those two questions and ponder over those two questions. If you're a Muslim that's been watching this, you know, Jazakallah khair, guys. You guys, mashallah, come online, you engage, you give da'wah, you know, you share your ideas, you know, you engage with non-Muslims. It's a beautiful thing to see. But really take this opportunity to sort of really get engaged. If you see non-Muslims, they just give them da'wah, man, and get involved in sharing this beautiful, life-changing, life-saving message of Islam. It's literally, as Allah says in the Quran, God says in the Quran, it's what's going to give you life upon your material life. You know, think about Allah. What does God say in the Quran? Don't be like those who forgot Allah, who forgot God, and God made them forget themselves. I mean, let's just ponder over this ayah for a second. Yeah, God is saying, don't be like those people who forgot their creator, and in turn they ended up or were made to forget themselves. That's a profound verse if we think about it. You know, as human beings, how can you forget yourself? I mean, if you think about it, how can you? Yourself is your primary concern, you would say, right? That it's about you. Life is about you. How can you forget yourself? You know, if you think about it, I'm not forgetting myself from a material perspective. I'm making sure I have my food when I get hungry. I use the restroom. I make sure I bathe regularly so I stay clean. If I get sick, I get the medication. I do some exercise to stay fit and healthy. You're not really forgetting yourself. But God is not referring to yourself from the perspective of your physical material existence. When you turn away from your creator, you forget your true essence of who you are as a human being, right? The I, the self, that is what we're forgetting when we forget God. And that is, the self is what is screaming out. It's the nature of the self which screams out when you adopt such worldviews, when you turn away from God, and it reminds you and it puts you in a state of anxiety and depression because it's telling you this is not the truth. This is not what life is about. Meaninglessness, purposelessness, nihilism. No, there is meaning to your existence. Look for that. And the only way we're going to find this is if we find our creator. You know, so it's I would say, you know, just if you're an atheist, is really question your worldview. You know, put aside the jargon, the intellectual gymnastics, the logic, the philosophy. Really ask yourself, does my worldview, is it in line with my nature? And that's, I think, a place for us to start. So I thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments in the comment section below. If you have any questions, please leave them in this comment section below. If there's any topics you guys want me to touch upon, please let me know in the comments. Make sure to subscribe, share this video on your Facebook pages, on your channels. Let's get this message and this information out to many more people. You know, I thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys being online. Jazakallah khair. Thank you to the non-Muslims that have come online and engaged with us as well. Yeah, that's it. May God bless you guys. May God guide all of us. You know, may God guide the atheists and the Muslims. And brothers and sisters, you know, we're heading towards a very profound month of the year, Ramadan. This is an opportunity for us to really re-collaborate and turn towards our creator. So let's make sure we do that. That means less time on social media, more time with Allah, with God, engaging with his words, praying, supplicating, you know, and just fixing ourselves, I guess. This is the time. And even for atheists, you know, we know the shayateen, the devils are locked up from a metaphysical perspective. They are locked up, and therefore there will be less hindrance, I believe, for anyone that's in search of the truth. So really inquire and look into Islam, especially in this time. May God bless you guys. I'm going to wrap up now. Till next time, take care. Assalamu alaikum.